Hey guys, welcome back to the Ball Don't Lie podcast. I'm going to be hosting today. I'm Tejas, and here I'm with Hudson and a special guest today, friend of the podcast, Charles. Welcome to the podcast, Charles.
Thanks, Tejas.
All right, so today we're going to be discussing the top 75 all-time list. As we know, this is the 75th year of the NBA, and so ESPN decided to come out with a list of ranking the top 75 players of all time. And we're going to just give our reactions because, quite honestly, this list is atrocious. So I'm going to let Charles start off. Just give us your opinions, I guess.
Well, I think that one overarching theme that I've seen throughout the list is ESPN gave way too much credit to the old heads. I
Yeah,
think that there are a lot of newer players that are really underrated, and it's reflected through their rankings.
I completely agree. There's a lot of people, a lot of players, I would say were just lowballed. For example, how is Russell Westbrook? I feel like Russell Westbrook right now is one of the most disrespected players in the league. Um, I'm a big Westbrook fan, and I don't agree with this. 68? Like, are you trying to tell me that Westbrook? Are you trying to tell me that Chris Paul, who is listed at 29, is better than Russell Westbrook all time?
Oh my
Hell
god.
no. Hell no. Hell no. Like, I don't understand, man. I'll take Russell all day, all time over Chris Paul. And like, just some of these rankings are just atrocious. Like D Wade is behind
Yeah,
Chris Paul too. That one
okay.
is just terrible. Like, and yeah, I completely agree with the theme of a lot of old heads. Um, just I don't know. I feel like this list could be revised a lot. But like Dirk over Giannis, another one that was very sketchy. But Charles, what other bad listings do you see?
So I think, well, for one, I don't know if I agree with your Chris Paul being worse than Westbrook take.
Ooh,
I
okay.
think if you look at it from a career lens and you factor in like accolades and what's been done, I think there's a real argument that Chris Paul is better than Westbrook. Now, do I think he should be 40 spots ahead of Westbrook? Not at all. I think that's ridiculous. And I do think that Dwayne Wade behind Chris Paul is ridiculous as well.
Okay.
But I think that something that's really interesting that we should talk about is the placement of Kobe Bryant because
Number 10,
uh,
yeah.
following his death, I feel like a lot of people started to really overrate Kobe.
Yeah.
And I think 10 might be fair, but I know a lot of people would say he should be much higher. And some would argue that he's not even top 10. So, how do you all feel about Kobe on this
Hudson,
list?
I'll let you go first on this topic.
Yeah, sure. Most people honestly have well basically I'd say basically everybody has been over it. Like no disrespect, obviously. One of the greatest to play, but since his death, like you said, everyone's been basically kind of overrating him, but I could honestly argue, depending on who we're talking about, more reasons would say that he's probably borderline top 10, but I could also argue in a way that he could be included in that top 10. But I would say more reasons would go to being outside of that top 10 just because of how many. Because I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the players in the NBA now end up going into that top 10 that kind of push him out of that list of a lot of players out of that top 10. But right now, I could argue both sides with more of it going towards outside of the top 10.
You know, I actually have a differing um, opinion. I don't have a problem with Kobe being a 10. I actually don't. Um, yeah, I could see like on this list that ESPN has Shaq at 11, they have Durant at 12, and they have Elijah Wan at 13. I don't have a problem with Kobe being above them because if you think about it, literally he averaged almost 25 points a game throughout his career, won 5 chips. He's a transcendental player. He's one of the greatest to ever play in this game, and he's the dude after Michael. Like that that's his accolade, Mamba mentality. Um, I don't have a problem at all with him being a 10. Now, if you wanted to argue that, yeah, if you wanted to argue Shaq, Hakeem, you wanted to argue Kevin Durant, I mean, sure, we can have an argument, but I have absolutely no problem with Kobe Bryant being at 10. But, anyways, we can move on to the other stuff in this list. I know, Charles, you told me you had a little bit of a problem with Dirk being rated over Giannis. Tell me what you think about that.
I think just the accolades alone speak for themselves. And Giannis's short career so far, he already has one more MVP than Dirk ever had. Already has a Finals MVP just like Dirk, and even has a Defensive Player of the Year. I think that alone sets him apart from Dirk. And I think, like Hudson brought up, I think Giannis is definitely one of those players who could enter the top 10 very soon.
Yeah, I agree too. For right now though, if you made the case that Giannis hasn't played enough, yeah, I could see that. But he definitely has more accolades for sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if Giannis leapt into the top 10 in about a few years. Because if you think about it, he's in the MVP conversation right now. He more than likely will win Defensive Player of the Year this year. And in the future, he's only what? I think he's 20. He's 27.
27.
Think about this. Giannis is going to be playing in our league for another 8 to 9 to maybe even 10 more years. Imagine how many MVPs, Defensive Player of the Years, and how many finals he might win. He will definitely be in the top 10.
And it's not like he came to the league like already averaging 20. Like he came to the league like where nobody knew where he is. Like he really just started having like this superstar status in maybe 2018. And he was drafted in what, 20 when was it? 2013 or 14?
I'm pretty sure it was
2013. So he really only started a couple years ago, and he's still building up his jumper now. Is all coming together, and I mean, it's going to be scary.
Yeah, he's
Who
one
are some other players?
Yeah, I'm looking.
Okay. Who are some other players that you feel could jump into that top 10 that are playing currently?
Kevin Durant, man. I mean, KD's what? I think it's like 33.
Where do they have him at on the
they
list?
They had him at 12.
12.
Okay.
Steph Curry, obviously.
I have a hard time with Curry being outside the 10 already.
Huh?
I have a hard time placing Curry outside of top 10 right now.
Are you one of the ones that say that would you say he's the greatest point guard of all time as of right now?
I would. I think he's the greatest to play at the position. When you're talking about what the position does, Magic, of course, is the greatest point guard. But the greatest player to play point guard, I think, is Steph Curry.
Just skill-wise, yeah.
I agree with that statement. We know Magic for being the point guard, like the point guard, but it's tough having Curry outside of your top 10, considering the fact that he completely changed this game. He completely changed the fact that teams are now starting to shoot more threes. He's the greatest shooter ever, period. And I would, if he won a chip this year, and he finally got that Finals MVP, I would have a hard time seeing him outside the top 10 for sure. But like right now, I don't know, Charles. I don't know if I can have him over guys like Moses Malone and Hakeem. Like even having him over like KD's like tough for me, but for right now, I don't have a problem with him being outside the top 10, but he earns more accolades. He will 100% be in the top 10. And someone
like with
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, because just continuing quickly about Curry, like he completely changed the way that the NBA goes. Like most kids now, they're like you never hear anybody say that they want to be like LeBron or whatever. It's mostly like I want to be like Steph Curry and stuff. And he just like a lot of people I've heard like a lot of people saying that Steph Curry is the better player out of him and Magic, but Magic Johnson is the greater player. He's the greatest point guard of all time.
All right, this is just a me opinion. But I want to get back to this. Charles, I told you that Paul Pierce being at 61 was a disgrace. I'm sorry, not 61, 62. Here's the problem that I have with that. There are players like, there are players that I just like. For example, Ray Allen at 47, I just think is disgraceful.
Yeah.
I was having Ray Allen above Paul Pierce. Like, there's just no way you can do that. Like, what were these writers thinking? And for that matter, I said Paul Pierce. But we should have zero argument when saying that how in the world is Ray Allen ranked above James Harden? That just doesn't make sense at all.
I think with that, they're really giving Ray Allen credit for the volume of 3-pointers he made, because I really couldn't think of anything else that he did that was so stellar. Like, of course, before, in his earlier days, he was more than a 3-point shooter, and he was a really good player. But what he's known for is the 3-point shot. And with that logic, it just seems like their logic is so inconsistent. Like, I agree that he shouldn't be so high, but if they're valuing what he does from the 3-point range, why is Klay Thompson not on the list?
That's correct. Hudson, what do you think?
About
just about Ray Allen being ranked higher than guys like James Harden and Paul Pierce.
Yeah, honestly, in a completely hypothetical world where Ray Allen will go all the way back, right? James catches, puts it the 3, won't go, rebound Bosch, back out to Allen, no good. Spurs win the finals.
He's not top 75 then.
He will not be on this list, and he may not even be really in consideration, like, at all. And just, like, thinking that he's above guys, like, literally just to begin with Paul Pierce, I just don't think that, I don't know where, I mean, I do see where it came from because it won the Heat the finals, but, I mean, without that shot, it takes almost everything away. I mean, don't get me wrong, he was a great player, averaged, like, nearly 20, I believe, like, throughout his career, playing for, obviously, Boston, Miami, but I just really don't see how that one shot can get him into, not even just barely into, like, decently far into the best 75 NBA players of all time.
Yeah, fair point. This is the last point I want to ask you guys about, and I think we can move on from the list. Charles, you brought up future players that we think could, be in the top 10. I want to bring up a different question, but sort of similar. What players do we think, like the youngsters, what players do we think could possibly make a top, let's say, top 100? Maybe I might be stretching a little bit. Let's say we have a top 75 list 10 years from now on. What youngsters would you say could possibly make the list that are not on it right now?
I think an obvious one that jumps out immediately is Jokic. Mm-hmm. He got that MVP. Mm-hmm. Possibly has another one coming this year, but he'll definitely be on some sort of list. I think people just want to see what happens with his career, whether he turns into a Derrick Rose and nothing really happens after this MVP, or if he really can go a long way and rack up the accolades and the wins and the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I think another common pick will be Luka Doncic, just because of the way he plays the game and how much better he's gotten. But in all honesty, I think one we could see in a few years is LaMelo Ball. Because he has the popularity already.
That's true.
And as we've seen with a player like Ray Allen, popularity goes such a long way. Even if accolades don't stack up to his peers, just because he's so popular, people will view him as better than he actually may be.
Fair point. Hudson, what about you? I want to hear from you.
Yeah, I read something earlier today saying that if there was one person that could be the 76th, or I think technically would be the 77th person on this list, that Jokic could definitely be in consideration, but I definitely see him being on this list. Luka, obviously, that other name. And also, I would all shoot. It was no, it wasn't. I is Anthony Davis on this list?
Yeah, he's already on this
Yes.
list. He's listed in the 70s, which I think is fair for him.
It is, yeah. I mean, most of like the top, and also there's also going to be some guys that in 10 years, there's also going to be somebody that, like you said, with Ray Allen, like with LaMelo Ball, like that type of stuff. But there's going to be somebody that hits a big time shot that ends up winning them. I mean, it could be the finals or it could be to get them to the finals, whatever it is. It'll end up getting their way onto this list because the way that it works apparently with Ray Allen, obviously, it got him onto the list unless it's like some random player. But I mean, basically Luka and Jokic are to me the first two names that come to mind. LaMelo is definitely arguable, but with the popularity, like you said, could definitely be an option. But there's also going to be, I mean, maybe Mobley because just the way he's been playing so far this season has been incredible. But I mean, obviously, just these guys are. It's really hard to tell.
He's got a long way to go though. Evan Mobley.
He does, yeah, exactly. Because it's just like, and also there's going to be guys that like Luka's only been in the league for a couple of years, and it's just been really hard to tell.
Yeah.
And all, yeah, exactly. See, Embiid too is a good one also.
Before you said Embiid, I was gonna ask why y'all didn't say Embiid yet. I would say Embiid definitely has a chance of being a top 75 player for sure. Just the way he's playing this year, if he replicates that, doesn't get hurt, because we know that injury is a problem with Joel Embiid, and he's got to stay consistent. If he plays like he does now, for sure I could see him. If he wins MVP and possibly a finals, for sure I could see Joel Embiid. And I can also see Jokic, I can see Luka, I can see LaMelo. A sneaky two names that I want to throw in here. If Jimmy Butler wins the finals this year, wins finals MVP, he may have a shot. Just because of how prolific he's been to the finals. Just because of his career trajectory, another name I want to throw out, and I don't done so far. Okay, in terms of his statistics, with being on lists with guys like Larry Bird,
all jokes aside, I agree with you, but I think it'll really depend on to build their future, and so I think that if the Celtics can't bring some pieces around Brown and Tatum, that their careers will kind of fizzle out unless they leave and go somewhere else.
That's also true. Now I do. Oh, there's one more young player I wanted to throw out. I'm surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he landed on this list. Trae Young definitely has a very good chance. Go ahead.
You go. You finish.
I was going to say Trae Young just because of his playoff success so far, and he just reminds me of Steph, just his long range shooting, and the fact that he's such a good facilitator too would not shock me if he landed on this list at all. But those are like the only few players I see.
I have one more.
Let me guess. Ja Morant.
Yes.
Yeah, Ja's another.
I think the big thing with him though will be injuries.
Yes, that's
and whether they come or not, or when they come, what happens.
Yeah, but he's again, the talent in this league is just off the charts. Hudson, you got anything else to say?
Yeah, I couldn't really think of anybody before, but I just pulled up like the top 100 players from before the season started. Another guy I'll throw out there, or two guys actually that have been closely related to a lot, Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell. And also, I mean, I guess depending on literally when he can get back on the basketball court, I'll throw out Zion Williamson. But based off of how he played in his rookie season, he's definitely going to be, or also in his second season. Wait, no. I mean, yeah, and most of his rookie season, though, and part of the second season, I really think that he has the possibility to be one of the best players in the NBA, but he just hasn't stayed on the court for a consecutive amount of time. He hasn't been on the court once this season, which is just a huge problem, and I would be hella concerned if I were the Pelicans front office, considering you could have had John Morant, who's putting up an MVP season, when your number one overall pick is just not is at home right now. He's been home the whole entire season. There's just setbacks at least every single week.
Since we have Charles here on the podcast, and it's kind of rare that I personally get to talk NBA with Charles. What do you think is the state? What do you think about the state of the NBA right now, Charles? We have a jam-packed Eastern Conference, which I would say 5 to 6 to 7 possibly teams could come out of the Eastern Conference, and then you have the top-loaded Western Conference, which is kind of rare because in the past few years it's been quite the opposite. We've had a stacked Western Conference and a top-loaded Eastern Conference. What do you think this season about the state of the NBA?
Well, I think it's great. Just to sum it all up, I think that the parity this year that we're seeing is just going to do really great things for the league. A lot of people can really latch on to different teams and root for them and actually have a chance of them going a long way, because in the past years, we've pretty much known who was going to be in the finals, especially when it was Warriors Cavs. It felt like every year.
Correct.
And so now I really like, there are a lot of teams, and it's good to see a lot of veterans who have moved teams in positions to succeed. And it's also really cool to see a lot of young guys that are newly in these positions to succeed. So you have like guys like DeMar and Zach LaVine and Jimmy Butler, who have been around for a little bit, moved around for a little bit, and are still succeeding with their new teams. But we also have guys like the boys in Cleveland and John Morant, who are doing great things. So it'll be really interesting, and I think the future for the league is in great hands.
I want to talk about the Zion Williamson situation. Hudson, you can chime in as well. We had news come out today that Zion hasn't been communicating with the franchise that well. JJ Redick came on ESPN today and stated that he's worried about Zion and the Pelicans. Now, I'm not going to say, anything blasphemous and say that he's going to, call out for a trade, but things are getting a little worrisome in New Orleans. Hudson, what do you think about that? And then I'll let Charles answer.
I mean, the Pelicans just haven't been a good team ever since basically the trade for AD. Yeah, exactly. The AD trade, they just kind of have been going downhill. Then they got Zion back in their rookie. Obviously, they got the number one overall pick. They pick Zion Williamson, the literally top recruited guy who's going to be in the Hall of Fame in the next 5 years. And he's going to, everything's just going right for them. And then the injuries come in, and then the bubble comes in, and they literally add the play-in game for the Pelicans to make it to have Zion Williamson in the playoffs. And they still miss out on that. Currently, they're the 12th seed. They traded Steven Adams for Jonas Valanciunas. They got Devontae Graham for Lonzo Ball in the offseason. And they traded for CJ McCollum, got some help for Brandon Ingram. And this team is just still not doing anything. They're not that, but they're 12th in the East. In the West, they're 23-36, and they're nowhere near where they should be. They're still 2.5 games out from at least being the 10th seed in the play-in, so it's going to take a decent amount to get them back into the playoffs possibly this season, or at least in contention in the play-in. But nothing's been really going right. And when Zion comes back, it's not like it's going to completely turn this franchise around. There's still going to have to be a lot needed to be done in New Orleans for things to work out.
Charles, what do you think?
Well, I think the new stuff that JJ Redick released is really interesting, because before that news report came in, I was still pretty optimistic about Zion's situation. I saw something about a month ago that said, if you look at Zion and Joel Embiid, each in their third seasons, that Zion has still played more games than Joel had in his first 3 seasons. So with that, I thought there was a little bit of hope, but I really don't like seeing that Zion seems to not be a great teammate. He's not communicating with the team. I think that could really hurt his career as a whole. I think he could end up as someone who gets shipped around a lot, and because no one wants a locker room cancer, you know.
I
And
wouldn't. I don't.
it was great. Go ahead.
I really don't know. Like when you look at Zion, do you really like? I wouldn't. Like me and you, like right now, the public opinion, we wouldn't classify Zion Williamson as a locker room cancer just by his, just by what we've seen. But like, I was, I heard JJ Redick talk a little bit about it. He said, if you ever have like a player that's like traded in or like signed to the team, even 10-day contract guys, you at least as a team leader should reach out to those players and say, welcome to the team. If we need anything to help out with your move, something like that. I'm surprised that he did not reach out to CJ McCollum. CJ McCollum is, I would say, he's a very good player. He's an all-star caliber player, and he is going to make an impact with this New Orleans team. And Zion doesn't even reach out, being the face of the franchise. It's the situation in New Orleans is just getting a little skeptical. Right now they're sitting at 12th. Hudson mentioned. I wouldn't be surprised if they snuck into the play-in, but you have Portland sitting there. Even though we think that they should be rebuilding, they're just winning games left and right because of Anthony Simons. But if the Pelicans don't make the playoffs, Charles, and obviously Zion hasn't played, but like if they don't make the playoffs and Zion does return this season and they still don't make it, the media is about to they're about to come up with all the rumors of the places. Like they're gonna start popping up trade rumors. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if he even requested a trade if things continue like this. But for Zion's sake, I hope they don't. He's one of the when he came out of the draft, we were having conversations of, is he going to be the best player in the league? There were times last year, Darian, who was a part of our podcast, said that Zion was better than Jason Tatum. And I'm not even kidding about that. There were times
He was.
He said that Zion was better than Jason Tatum, had more potential. And we would debate about that. And yeah, you could say that last year, but like he hasn't stepped foot on a court this year. Like it's kind of crazy. This situation in New Orleans, it might get out of hand. But that's with them. And now I did want to ask you a little bit because I know you're a big Hornets fan. And the Hornets are one of the they're in the top 9 sitting right now. But go ahead and give me your thoughts about the Hornets. And do you think they'll make any noise this year, or maybe even in the future?
Definitely in the future. They have such a great young core that they're building with, and it can only get better, I feel like, if they retain all their pieces.
Mm-hmm.
This year, I don't expect the Hornets to go too far because just the lack of experience. Of course, there's Terry and Kelly, who are older players, but really Terry's the only one with real playoff experience. I think that we could see them make some noise in the first round if they get past the play-in. And potentially even that they'd be a team I'd have on the upset watch at all times, just because of how dynamic their play is.
Yeah, the Hornets
are super fun to watch. I think they have a great future ahead.
Mm-hmm. They're a very explosive offensive team. I would say the problems with the Hornets are on the defensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Charles, last 2 topics. I want to talk about this topic because Hudson will give a lot of this topic too. He'll really get engaged in this one. The Miami Heat are sitting at the 1 seed right now. Last year they had the debacle getting swept in the first round. 2 years ago, they were in the NBA Finals, and they could have possibly made noise if Bam didn't get hurt and Dragic didn't get hurt.
Yes.
But what are your thoughts on the Miami Heat? We have been talking about this all year. We've had this debate. Is Miami legit? Do we really think they have a chance to go to the finals and possibly win it all? What are your thoughts?
It's a tough one because we know how Miami's been in the past, but just looking at them this year, they were great without their key players, and then once Jimmy came back and their team really got fully healthy, they just took off, and the top of the Eastern Conference has been close all year. It looks like the top 6 seeds are separated by 5 games or less. So I think to answer that question, I'll just have to wait and see what happens in the first few weeks, maybe a month after this All-Star break.
Mhm.
Because I think if Miami can really continue on this trajectory that they're going and continue to dominate the teams that they have, I think we could be looking at something serious for the Eastern Conference. But Miami just gives me very phony vibes.
Mhm. What about?
You never know what could happen with them, especially with injuries.
Yep. What do you think?
This year, I legitimately think that we have a chance, even going back to the 2020 finals run in the bubble. I was not really, when the bubble started, I wasn't really thinking, we legitimately have a chance to get to the finals. I did not think we would get past the Bucks in the second round in 5 games. But I mean, I honestly wouldn't. I would get annoyed when people would say it was a bubble fluke or whatever. But honestly, on the inside, I felt like it. Honestly, not that it was, but I didn't think that we would be able to go all the way back to the finals again. Especially as well as the Lakers. I didn't think they would end up going back anywhere near there, as we were both out in the first round of last year's postseason, only having a little bit of the offseason. But this year, I'm feeling fully confident that we can go all the way back there. We went into the All-Star break with number one as number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. It's been tough all season, very close between the Bucks and the Cavs, honestly, and the Bulls and the Nets, at least for the first couple weeks. And then after that, they just completely went downhill in a 10-game losing streak. But I mean, we've had injury concerns all season. Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo were both injured for a while earlier in the season. Most notably, Bam was out for 6 straight weeks. Jimmy Butler was just out for a ton of different waves of a couple of injuries, the ribs and the tailbone and the fingers and just whatever. He was out for a couple just different time periods here and there, but we are now fully healthy, at least for the most part. Not even, honestly. Victor Oladipo is still not even back yet. Markieff Morris is... I don't even think he's going to end up playing for the rest of the season, honestly. I mean, I just have...
That hit Jokic gave him, though.
I mean, it's looking more and more like Keith won't be back for the rest of the season, honestly, which is kind of annoying, but it is what it is. But just the defense on this team is obviously incredible. The offense is just made up by guys like Hero and Duncan, and just even guys on the defensive end that turn back into offense. Jimmy Butler, Bam, obviously, and then PJ Tucker's just automatic from that corner. Will have at least 2 or 3 threes every single game. But the main teams in the East I am concerned about are the teams that made the crazy blockbuster trade at the deadline. The Sixers and Nets, I feel like both got better. Obviously, because the Sixers basically just traded based off of what they were going off of the team from the season. They basically traded Steph Curry and Andre Drummond for James Harden, if you want to break it down like that, of who was actually playing the season. Well, the Nets traded Harden for Simmons, and I know Suhas, who's also another Heat fan, part of the podcast, he and also me were both kind of more nervous about the Nets now that they have a great defender in Ben Simmons, as opposed to having one just complete team of no defensive guys before with Harden. So it's going to be interesting. I think we can take down the Bulls for sure in a series out of 7. But the Sixers and Nets are the teams I'm kind of concerned about. I know the Nets are honestly the 9 seed or the 8 seed right now, but I do think that they'll end up making their way back up the standings in no time. But I do think that we'll go into the playoffs as the 1 or 2 seed and make our way through until the conference finals, where we will find, I feel like, our first matchup.
Interesting. Charles, I want your opinion on this Sixers Nets trade. We talked about it last week, but I want to hear it from you. What do you think about it, and how does it really impact this Eastern Conference?
I think it has the potential to really bust open the entire conference. the 76ers, because they've been dealing with the absence of Ben Simmons and trying to really work with that chemistry of the team, they've been a team who's kind of been wishy-washy. We know how good Joel Embiid can play, and we know how good the surrounding pieces could be, but it always felt like something was missing, and I think that was like strong guard play. And now that they have Harden, if he really gels with Embiid and the way that the team plays, they could really do something dangerous. It's two of the top 10 players in the league on the same team, and that's always something to look out for. And then in terms of the Nets, I know they got KD and they have one half of Kyrie. That is enough to make the playoffs. I'm sure, like Hudson said, they'll turn it around soon. But I think Ben Simmons could really make or break the team, like Hudson mentioned. If he comes and plays like the Ben Simmons we know he can be, with or without a jump shot, that team could really do something special. It's one less ball dominant player, which could make the offense flow even better. And he's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. So both teams really could become even better than they were.
All right. Before we wrap up, Charles, this is the last question I'm gonna ask you, but it's a quick question.
All right.
Early finals predictions and winner. Let's hear it.
From the West, it's hard for me to think that any team will beat Phoenix in 7 games.
Okay.
So I think Phoenix is going to come out of the West. I just think they've been so dominant throughout this season. They only have 10 losses on the year. I don't know if Golden State, I don't know if their play has been consistent enough for me to really latch on to them and believe that they can take it deep into the playoffs. But I'm pretty confident in Phoenix. And for the East, I really don't know. I think Philly, who's already the 3 seed, could really make something happen with the addition of James Harden. But like I said, I feel like if the play styles don't mesh, that could really break their entire scheme. I think the safer bet is Milwaukee, even though they've been underperforming this year. But I think teams to watch out for are Miami and Chicago. Chicago, they don't really have too much playoff experience. And a lot of times I feel like with teams like them who really come from nothing, they tend to underperform in the playoffs. If you think about the Hawks in like 2014, they were just okay the year before, and then they came out with a 1 seed in the East.
Yep.
And of course they had to get through LeBron, but with how dominant they were in the regular season, you would have thought they would have done a little bit better than getting swept in the Eastern Conference Finals. So I think the safe bet's Milwaukee. I think if I had to really go on a whim, I'd go with Miami or Philadelphia. But I think Phoenix could take it all.
Okay.
If they have to play Milwaukee again, I'm a little skeptical to say Phoenix.
Okay.
I think those matchups are really tough for Phoenix.
Okay.
Because no one can stop Giannis, and they really have no one who can slow him down.
Yeah.
So
that's
what I got.
Okay. I'm surprised, Charles, you forgot to mention a certain other team in the Eastern Conference.
Oh,
and who's
Celtics?
Okay. This is the last thing I'm going to say, and then we can possibly wrap up. The Celtics have the best defense in the league.
Oh, my.
Charles, you tell me, who are you going to pick on in that starting lineup and closing lineup? Okay? You can't pick on Marcus Smart. You can't pick on Jaylen Brown. You can't pick on Tatum. You can try and get to the rim, but then Rob Williams is just sitting there to send your shit to Madagascar. Like, who are you going to pick on in that?
I would say not to name names, but a certain guy named Darian would say a certain guy named Jason Tatum.
Okay, Tatum has been really good defensively this year, but you know what? That's another story for another day. For me personally, a finals matchup, I'm going to be biased because I honestly think it could happen. I think Boston has the best defense in the league. And yeah, their offense is spotty at times, but it's going to be Warriors Celtics in 6. That's my biased ability coming out right there. But thank you so much for joining us on this episode, Charles. Really
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Ian. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. As usual, make sure to subscribe, like, follow, share, and do whatever. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace out.